Hello stranger, can you tell us where you've been? More importantly, however did you come to be here? Hello Internet, and welcome back to According to John. It's been a while. Since COVID hit, I've been mostly taking commissions and working on the sequel to my graphic novel. I haven't made videos in a while. So, hi everybody. I'm back, sort of. I wanted to do some new content because it's been a while, and since I often see the flood myth brought up in conversation, and not just a lot of answers in Genesis material, but like even among the atheist community, I often hear the idea repeated that the flood myth comes from the Epic of Gilgamesh and so forth, which is sort of true, but I feel like we should put a finer point on that, hence another reason for making this video, because I've already covered the epic itself a couple of years back. I wanted to put a finer point on it because I think that it's a little reductive to just say that the story is from the Epic of Gilgamesh, because while the flood myth is contained in the Epic of Gilgamesh, it's not the origin of the story. So I think it's more of an example of a speciation event among stories than one being a direct literary derivation of the other. Instead, they both appear to be based on a story contained in the Sumerian Kings list. I thought, just to, sort of weigh in on this once and for all so that I have something I can refer back to later instead of typing out the same response over and over. So this is a basic breakdown of the history and evolution of the flood myth. So about 5,000 years ago, in what is now Iraq, insert obligatory I love maps declaration here, the Sumerian culture flourished on the floodplain between the Tigris and Euphrates rivers. This was during the Jemdet Nasser period, and the city of Shuruppak had become a grain storage and distribution city boasting more silos than any other city in Sumer. Situated near the banks of the mighty Euphrates River, Shuruppak was a sprawling urban center covering nearly 100 hectares of land at the time. The people made polychrome pottery with figurative and geometric designs and shaped arsenical copper into tools and ornamentation, but all of that was about to change. So, exceptionally heavy rainfall in Syria, near the headwaters of the Euphrates, was about to spell disaster. The resulting swell raced down the river valley from the northwest, destroying an earthen dam and the interconnected irrigation system the Sumerians had built, merging the Euphrates and Tigris rivers into a single unstoppable torrent. The waters inundated and overwhelmed the city of Shuruppak, submerging it beneath several fathoms of water and essentially washing it away. The entire valley, as far as the eye could see, was completely covered with water. So to the survivors, it very much looked like the entire world had been flooded. So time passes, and life eventually returns to a semblance of normalcy. In the new cities which sprung up in the aftermath, cuneiform writing was invented, and the story of the Great Flood was recorded and mythologized. It was spun as something of a hyperbolic morality tale starring the Sumerian kings Yasudra, Atrahasis, Utnapishtim, and incorporated into the Eridu Genesis and the Sumerian kings list as a fixed point of reference on the timeline, and latterly the Epic of Gilgamesh. So a few hundred years go by, and in about the 2320s BCE, the Akkadian king Sargon invaded and conquered the land of the Sumerians. So the Akkadians synchronized their deities with the Sumerian pantheon, and the story of the deluge was passed on to future generations. So by the 19th century BCE, a small Akkadian town had risen to prominence to become Babylon, and the flood myth was added into the Babylonian Enuma Elish and promulgated as literal history, which it was to a certain extent despite the flowery embellishments. Now, over 1,000 years go by. In 587 BCE, Nebuchadnezzar, the king of Babylon, laid siege to Jerusalem, destroying Yahweh's temple and taking the Israelite elite, priesthood, and artisans captive to Babylon. It was here, during the exilic period, that the Jewish religion was finally amalgamated and codified into something we would recognize as Judaism. The polytheistic aspects were stripped away, combining Yahweh, El, who had originally been separate Canaanite deities, with aspects of the Sumerian gods Enlil and Marduk to create one semi-cohesive narrative. So the flood myth was then incorporated and embellished further into what would eventually become the Book of Genesis. And Ziusudra Atarhasis-Utnapishtim became the character Noah. So by 539 BCE, Cyrus the Great had conquered Babylon, introducing Zoroastrian concepts to the region, and the Israelites in exile were allowed to return to Judea, bringing the flood myth with them. Now, cuneiform writing was fairly widespread at the time, and they were probably at least peripherally aware of the story, even before Nebuchadnezzar conquered the area. It wasn't codified and put into their origin story until probably the 2nd century BCE, really. So anyway, that's a basic breakdown of where the story comes from and how it evolved over time to become part of the biblical narrative. So anyhow, that's the basic rundown. Anyway, so let me know in the comments what you think. Hopefully I will be able to find time to make more content in the near future, and we can go from there. So as always, thanks for watching, everybody, and I hope you're having a wonderful day. Take care of each other, and be careful out there. See you around. You're a stranger till she whispers you can stay. You're a stranger till she whispers that your journey's over. Where you worth before Her Majesty the Verde River. Where you worth before Her Majesty the Verde River.